So I'm Dylan Rosenhammer. This is Paul Moore. We are with Insurica, as Greg pointed out. He really touted us up as much as we could probably do, so we'll get over all that.
Eventually.
Yeah, at some point. What we'll do is we want to introduce what the DBE Advantage is. It's something that we've been putting together for probably 7 or 8 months now, maybe a little bit longer. We've just now got it on its feet. And what it is, it's going to be a unique program for DBEs and tribal contractors and 8A set-asides. We write quite a few of the larger ODOT contractors right now, a lot of the primes, a lot of the big guys doing city and state municipal work right now. And as we'll kind of explain going forward, some of those guys, they're paying a bunch of money in insurance and surety premiums, so they're getting a lot of treatment that maybe some of the smaller guys don't get. I mean, we'll just be frank with you. So what we've elected to do is put together a program that kind of pushes some of the services that they get, the guys paying $500,000 or $1 million a year for insurance and surety, down to some of the guys that might be paying $25,000 and $50,000 or less in insurance and surety type premiums. So, I mean, Paul can go over a little bit of what the hot topics are, and then we'll get into each of them a little bit here in a little bit.
Yeah, we have, and first off, let me say this. This sounds like, with the intro and Insurica and our company and all that, sounds like a sales, sort of a sales pitch, and that's really not what we're here for. This is an educational endeavor, because we feel like, the agency out there that best educates their clients, has an advantage. Just like, you guys, you want knowledge is power. Well, we want to impart that to you if we can, to some degree. But what the DBE Advantage program entails, what you'll see, like Dylan said, on a lot of the bigger prime contractors that are doing ODOT and municipality work, agencies will roll out, they'll have a loss control rep, and we do in-house, and you'll see here in a minute, John Schlarb is our in-house loss control representative, and he is essentially on our team and an advocate for you. And John goes out on some of those larger contractors, and he'll do site inspections and get out ahead of the OSHA curve and out ahead of the company. Like, say your carrier is Travelers, he'll be out there and inspect and tell you what, if Travelers shows up, what they're going to say and what they would like and not like. And so he really is an insider for you and an advocate. That's one of the first things we list, because that's very, very important for your property casualty risks, especially on the casualty side. If you're doing utility relocation, things like that, that's very important. Another thing, pay-as-you-go work comp with monthly wage reporting. If you're starting out or you're building your business, as some of you probably are, cash flow, you're watching it daily, and typically an insurance work comp policy, industry standard is, okay, it's $50,000, so you owe 25% of that down, and then 9 or 10 equal payments after that. Well, that 25% on $50,000 is going to be a pretty big number if you're a smaller contractor. So we have relationships with carriers who have a pay-as-you-go feature where you're just going to report essentially your payroll monthly, and that instead of 25, then you're just basically paying for what you use. That's the theory there.
Yeah, it's basically, for the seasonal, because we know a lot of you guys are seasonal contractors. You might make a bunch of money in the summertime, and then when it's cold, you might be sitting kind of waiting to bid those next projects that come up in March, April, and May to get really busy in the summertime again. Now, a lot of you guys might be with CompSource already, which is kind of a pay-as-you-go, but unfortunately it's CompSource, and you might not get the best service in the world with that. So we do have other carriers that do that as well, and we're not saying anything's wrong with CompSource. We've actually had a lot of success working with them. They do partner with what's called a CWMP, which we'll get into a little bit more in the future, and talk about how that helps you guys with a CompSource type program. But with all the changes coming right now in workers' comp, I don't know if you guys have heard the Oklahoma option, if you've heard those words that are coming up. In February of 2014 it starts, period. I mean, this is a huge, huge change for the state of Oklahoma. And we just passed, two separate bills very recently that are going to be major increases for the employer when it comes to workers' comp. And I'm not saying increases in premiums. It's going to be an increase in your protection now against the fraudulent claim. It's a big, big deal, but these are things that we have to be in front of the game, on top of, so we can take advantage of going forward. And if you haven't heard about them yet, ask your insurance agent about them because they're extremely important. We went through a John Doe put on a Oklahoma Insurance Department work comp seminar yesterday at OCCC. And they explained a little bit of it. They're still a little bit, hanging out there, not real sure exactly how it's going to go. It's kind of like the healthcare reform right now. There's still some gray area. But I guess where we're going with this is the average cost per employee in Oklahoma was $830 for work comp per employee. Texas was like $275 and Arkansas was like $292. These are surrounding states. So literally, if you had an office in Oklahoma, Texas, and Arkansas, you're paying 3 times the amount for workers' comp for that same employee, just because he's crossing the state line. So it's going to help Oklahoma bring more businesses here. First of all, there's a lot of businesses that will plant all around Oklahoma, but not in Oklahoma because of our comp system, unfortunately. So that's going to help. Second of all, it's going to help you guys, save some money going forward, and we'll get into that a little bit later, where that money can go right back into working capital and cash flow and help with surety and other things like that. So, anyways, go ahead.
We probably warn you out there on work comp. There's a little more to come on that front in just a little bit. Subcontract review, working with some of the primes and GCs. We see a lot of both sides of the issue, so we feel like we're in a good position to give you direction and information there that will help you with your subcontract agreements. Employee handbook review. There's a couple of things there. One is John Schlarb, our in-house loss control. We have access to a lot of boilerplate and sample type handbook items addressing the full gamut of issues that the handbook should. Plus, we contract with a service that you can call. We can set you up that's like an HR hotline, basically. And it's a full library of resources. You can call and get an opinion, hiring and firing, anything related to HR that can be part of the game as well.
One of the things on the HR hotline, let me touch base on that. They record every conversation that you have with them. So if you're having an issue with an employee, or you're having an issue, let's say someone didn't show up to work yesterday, and you don't know, should I fire him? Am I going to get sued for wrongful termination? Is it stated in my handbook exactly what, how that goes down if that's to happen? Well, first of all, we got to make sure you have a handbook. If you don't, then unfortunately there's really nothing to fall back on. Now, once you do have one, and again, these are free services offered through the DBE Advantage. If you do have one and you're still a little, he did say he had kind of a headache yesterday when he left. I don't know, he didn't show up. Is it a work comp claim now? How do we deal with this? With this HR hotline, you call these guys, they record the conversation, so they document it. And let's say he doesn't show up for 2 more days, and you let him go. And you get a lawsuit. Next thing, he's suing you for wrongful termination. Well, guess what? You called, you got advice from a licensed HR tech through HR Connect. They'll send you the recording of that conversation with their advice. You can use that in a court of law, and there you go. You actually reached out and did your part, and we've seen it help tremendously in lawsuits. So it's a big tool. It's a tool that we pay for. We don't charge it back to the customers. We do pay for it. It's not cheap. So when someone signs up for it, we hope that they're using it. We do monitor to see if people use it or not, and we've had tremendous success so far of people that have enjoyed using HR Connect.
Quarterly claims reviews. We would hope that your agent is reviewing your claims that you have each quarter. That would be work comp, liability, auto, property, you name it. If you haven't had a claim, if you've been in business, 2 or 3 years and you've yet to have a claim, that's great. But if you're of a certain critical mass where you're having, things periodically, or you might have 2 or 3 claims a year, once a quarter you should review those, not just because it goes into a certain, it's reported informationally on that basis, but because if you wait 6 months or you review it once a year, the facts can get stale, they can get fuzzy, and you want to know what happened, why did it happen, how can we prevent it from happening again, what does this mean for our rates at renewal. There's a whole list of things that's going to affect. Insurica Fleet Tracking, we partner with U.S. Fleet Tracking. Some of you may be familiar with that. If you have a vehicle fleet, if you have trucking, who all here is involved in trucking? Anybody? Or do you have a vehicle fleet like with service trucks or anything like that? Anybody? Tell you what, first things first, let's go around and do a survey of what businesses you're in, just so we'll know kind of how to tailor this. So we'll start here.
I'm with ODOT.
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 Okay. Okay.
ODOT.
Okay.
Nathan Olivas with Olivas Construction. We specialize in concrete work.
Okay.
Okay.
Supply management.
Okay.
ODOT.
Okay. ODOT. Yep.
COTPA, there's Metro Transit.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, okay. So for construction, will you? What's that?
We do have trucking companies or DBE.
Right. Right. In that arena, there's a couple of things that U.S. Fleet Tracking that monitoring your vehicles does for you. One is, you keep track of them, you know where they're going. You've got speed sensors, you've got the ability to monitor where they're at, where they're going, how fast. You've got the ability to monitor idle time, so that if you want to cut out your idling time, we've got a big contractor that implemented this. They put how many? 50?
Yeah, 50 or 60 units on, and they're saving, thousands and thousands of dollars a month just on gas from idle time. One of the other neat features is it'll alert you if someone's going over 78 miles an hour, or if someone is going outside the parameter that you've built. If they've got a work truck and they can only drive from home to work, you don't want them at JJ's Pub down the street. Well, guess what? When it goes out of that little umbrella, then it will alert the owner and say, hey, your truck is now outside. So, and you can get on the computer and see exactly where it is,
right,
where it's going, where it's parked. So we think it's a great product for larger fleets. We're glad our company doesn't have one. It would have seen mine going to Colorado on a fly fishing trip last year. But yes, it's a great product. And again, we partner with them, so we get preferred pricing. It's not anything that goes directly to us. It does go to U.S. Fleet Tracking, but since we've branded with them and partnered with them and brought them enough business, and we do get some preferred pricing with them.
Well, and everybody likes to bash on Big Brother. Well, this gives you a chance to be Big Brother. I like that. Employee benefits available. We have an entire department at Insurica that's employee benefits. I mean, they handle everything. Pubco, the Thunder. I mean, you name it. Some really big outfits. However, we also have the ability to take on small firms. They do seminars periodically. With all the healthcare changes right now, you're seeing they'll do seminars at least once a quarter, if not more often, and you get access to that to find out what's coming down the pike with healthcare reform. Annual meetings with CPA to establish guidelines for a surety work program. Dylan, take that one. We were talking to Tony earlier, and kind of what our roles are is we take a team approach. I've been in the insurance business for 18 years. I know enough about surety to be a little bit dangerous. Dylan comes from a banking background. And he is our lead surety guru. Can I call you that?
Sure.
Okay. He's our lead surety guru. So when we come into an account and they say, hey, we'd like to work with you guys and look at our, the full deal bumper to bumper, property casualty, I'm going to take that and analyze it and go this direction. Dylan's going to take the surety side and he's going to analyze that and go that direction. So he's your guy when it comes to surety, and Dylan, you'll want to run off into the annual meeting, the CPA, and the whole surety gamut.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of you guys, I don't know if you have CPA prepared financial statements or if you're just doing in-house, or if you're having a review, or if you're having an audit done. I mean, I know ODOT does require an audit. Is it every 3 years? Every 5 years for a lot of the bigger contractors now? Is it 5? Yeah. I know it kind of, and a lot of our larger guys get an audit anyway, so it's not really a problem. We get the audit, we review it, we'll sit down with the surety, with the underwriter, with the owners, go through a work in progress schedule, go through exactly where they're at on all their projects. Real easy, 20-minute meeting, in and out. Now, for some of the smaller guys that aren't getting an audit or review quality statement, it takes a little bit more work for the surety. They really want to get their hands around what they're underwriting, because to a surety, there's, and we'll talk about it a little bit more, but, the surety looks at character. That's one of the big things. When I came from banking, we looked at collateral, we looked at cash flow, and we looked at credit. That was our big 3 things in banking. Well, in surety, it's not the case. In surety, you look at character, you look at capital, and you look at, you do look at collateral in some situations, but, typically that's not the number one thing. Whereas if you're borrowing against a house, how much is the house worth? Great. So what we like to do is sit down with your CPA or with your person that's doing your internal statements and kind of give you some ideas as to say, look, here's what the surety is going to look for before we go into the meeting with the surety. This is what they're going to want to see. Your working capital has got to be X amount to provide a work program for whatever you need, period. Your equity in the company's got to be X amount before they're going to consider this. Now, with SBA guarantees, that does help a little bit in that. Standard sureties, your Travelers, your CNAs, your Liberties, those guys are standard sureties. They can only go off what's on the paper. So unfortunately, they rely off what's on that paper. So they will grill you to death on that paper. So we like to get in there first and kind of be the guard gate between those two and say, here's what they're going to look for. Here's the changes that we would make. Here's some, we could subordinate some of this internal debt perhaps to increase, working capital and increase equity. We do stuff like that all the time. And then when we go to the surety, we say, here's what it looks like. It may not look like exactly what you want it to be right now, but here's the steps that we've taken and that we're going to take over the next 12 to 18 months to get it to where you need to be. And surety is like that. They say, wow, it's because bonds aren't products. They're not something you go pull off the table and say, okay, call your insurance agent, I need a bond for tomorrow's bid, it's $1 million job, go get it for me. Unfortunately, if you guys have ever tried that, it doesn't work. You have to qualify for bonds weeks, months in advance before you get into the game of surety. So we like to stay on top of the game there, and we will meet with your CPAs, we'll meet with your people that are doing your in-house financials and explain, kind of give them a guideline as to what, okay, if you want a $10 million work program, here's what you have to establish, because the CPAs and the surety underwriters are pulling two different ways. The CPAs are saying, get all the money out, don't pay as much taxes as possible, take it out. It's we're going to limit your tax liability. Well, the sureties are saying, no, hold on. Keep the money in the company. We're bonding against your company. They'll take personal indemnification into account, but realistically, it's the strength of the company that makes sense. So they're going to say, leave all the money you can in the company. So there's kind of, well, at the end of the year when the statement comes out and the surety says, we don't like it, well, the CPA recommended that we do it like this. Well, the surety doesn't like it like that. So we can help prevent that before it happens, and we see it all the time happen. So anyways, go ahead.
Ongoing surety loss control insurance training. We just want to try to be regimented rather than just an open-ended, hey, we're your insurance agent and we'll do something sometime if we get to it. We want to try to set out basically a service schedule of when we're going to do what. So that just speaks to that. We want to try to be as regimented as we possibly can with you. Seminars, webinars, and the meet and greets, those last two should probably be combined because we do quarterly, and the next thing we're going to show you is just an example of a seminar that we did a couple of years ago, right before some of the first work comp reform came out. And who attends those? Well, there's some of the big prime contractors that you probably want to work for, and some of the smaller ones as well. And it's a pretty good mixer. Well, it wasn't really intended that way, but it's worked out that way. Where we come and, like I said, we just throw some knowledge at you and try to educate on what's coming. It could be legislation, it could be reform, it could be industry trends. We've done some of that, or it's just strictly on the inner workings of your NCCI experience modifier. So whatever it would be, there's going to be a hodgepodge of contractors there. And it's a pretty good mixing pot. So if you want to jump into that, we can go.
Yeah, the goal of the DBE Advantage is to get enough traction with the DBEs so they're now exclusive just DBE seminars and webinars and meet and greets. And we'll put together ones with some of the prime guys too, so you can get to know the Cummins of the worlds and the Dewitt's of the worlds and the guys that you see getting all the big projects. You don't want to work for them. I want to meet these guys. I want to meet the guy that's out doing the project in Weatherford, whatever. Well, you'll get to meet those guys. But we want to create enough traction where we have DBE programs where you guys come in and say, look, as a DBE, here's what you guys are facing. Here's what you're struggling with right now. Here's some legislation coming down the pipe that's going to affect you guys, not the primes, not the general building contractors, not the big utility guys, but the DBEs, the small businesses. So that's where we've started this. You've probably seen maybe one email so far that got blasted out to all the DBEs. It was still kind of a work in progress at that point. We had to get some approvals from different carriers. We had to get, some approvals from ODOT, kind of helping support it. We've got extremely a lot of help from Victoria, who's helped to get the word out there for us. So now that it's up and running, we're really going to start pushing it out and just giving you guys the opportunity just to speak one-on-one. We'll have DBE conferences. We'll call you guys in only, just the DBEs, to come and talk about some stuff and find out what some challenges are in your industry and where we could help. So, like Paul was saying, we already do this for a lot of our bigger guys. A lot of agents, unfortunately, the bigger agencies do this for the bigger contractors. You know, if you're paying $1 million in premium, you're probably going to get a little bit redder carpet than if you're paying $10,000 in premium. That's just how it is. Just like in you guys' industry, if you're going to make 40% profit margin on a job as compared to 10, which one are you going to kind of strive towards? You're going to go that 40 or 50% margin job. So we did this a couple years ago when, I can't remember, it was 1078 that was coming out. I can't remember which one of the Senate bills had been passed at the time, and we invited some of our larger ODOT and ODOT, our OMCA, our AGC, our heavy division, and our AGC building chapter. We invited some of our guys in and did one exclusive for them. Kind of got them a little bit ahead of the game on what was coming down the pipe. So we just kind of want to review, give you an example, and this is stuff that you guys can absolutely take away. There's some stuff today that will still help a lot, don't get me wrong. But we call it putting the pieces together, and it was basically, did we miss a slide here? Okay. What this was is there was some legislation that had come through. I think it was Senate Bill 1078.
878.
What was it? 878?
878.
Yeah. 10. Okay. So 1078 and 1062 and all that's coming through right now. So 878 was one that extended the waiting period on the work comp from 3 days to 7 days. It was a huge deal for Oklahoma. We were one of 3 states that didn't do that. A huge, huge deal. So, and there, yeah, go ahead.
If you're not paying any work comp premium, it's not a huge deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you're paying work comp premium, it's a huge deal.
If you're one of the decision makers in your company, you see what work comp is and how much of a nightmare it truly is to understand what the EMOD worksheet is and understand what you get your premium. You're like, gosh, it went up 19%. What can I do about it? Nothing. You know, unfortunately in Oklahoma, that's just how it is. Well, there are some things you can do about it, and there's some things that you can help fight the NCCI, and we can go back and manipulate the mod worksheet, which we're going to talk about here in a second.
And we should tell you, this is just an example. This is, like I said, this
yeah, we did
PowerPoint,
this in 2011.
This is 2 years old,
Yeah.
but all we're doing is we want to show you this as an example of what you would see if you came to one of our seminars.
Yeah.
And again, this was geared toward larger, smaller, everybody. And now we're also going to focus DBE specific seminars, presentations for what is specific to you. But this is just an example. Some of the things that changed, and we'll show you as we go along here. This was proposed at the time. Well, now it's law.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll hit on those points as well.
Yeah, so we had, sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. It was obviously myself, Paul, and John Schlarb, who's not here today, but he's our loss control guy. Paul talked about earlier. He's our guy that goes out in the field. You know, he'll go and inspect job sites for you. We pay him to do it. You guys don't have to. Now, we give him a certain amount of hours, and if you really like his service, then you might pick up another 50 or 100 hours from him going forward. He bills you direct for that. But we give a certain amount of free hours up front to let him go out and do handbook reviews and job site inspections and mock OSHA inspections. And he'll report back to the owners or to the project managers and say, look, here's the 4 items you need to look at and work on because you will be fined when OSHA shows up for these deals. But he's not here. He's out probably throwing somebody off a roof today or something. There's a reason why our loss control guy is 6'5" and 275 pounds. And Paul and I are not. So we're talking about this stuff in the nice air conditioning while he's out getting in project managers' faces and telling them what's going on. So we like him. We did have Bob Burt at this one. This was a big, big deal to have Bob Burt. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him or not, but he's not here today, of course. But he was a guest speaker with us at the time, and he's pioneered a lot of the work comp reform and legislation in the state of Oklahoma, written over 100 books. I'm an inducted to the Oklahoma Hall of Fame and the Oklahoma Historical Society Hall of Fame. I mean, this guy knows his stuff. He's a work comp attorney, actually, but he's pro-employer. So he's not here, but this, again, we're just going over an example of what we were doing. So going the wrong way again.
Get it together, man.
I'm sorry.
Get it together.
Okay. Okay, you can go ahead and take over this slide here.
Okay, why are we here? This was basically to talk about the changes that were coming in work comp at the time. Show you how to take advantage of the changes, the reforms that came through, how your EMOD is affected by the variables. We'll get into some number crunching in a little bit. If you haven't ever delved into the NCCI modifier formula and what all the moving parts are, it's a lot like hieroglyphics. It's very confusing, it's very complex, but we try to break it down to a few key points. What the most important moving parts are and let you focus on that. That may or may not have interest to you. how it's affected by the variables. And the one major thing, and we'll hit on it several times, is how to implement and maintain a return to work late duty job program. We'll see in a minute. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to go there. We'll wait. We'll do the suspense thing.
And I know what you guys are saying, oh great, here's another work comp seminar. Well, work comp, as you guys know, probably makes up about half of your insurance premium total. You know, you've got your general liability, you got your auto, you got your property, you got maybe your equipment, inland marine, your umbrella, but you've got work comp, which when you look at the breakdown of your insurance, it's like, gosh, health insurance and work comp, why am I paying so much for these two things? I've only got 8 employees. Why the heck am I paying $35,000 for work comp? I mean, that seems like, and I've had 1 injury in 4 years. Well, it's because how Oklahoma is and was, and going forward it's going to change, or we hope it's going to change. They've put the right measures in place now to mirror what Texas and what Missouri and what Arkansas are doing around us. But that's why we hit on it, because it's not just an insurance product. I mean, we're here coming from more of a banking standpoint, or anyway, that's what I grew up doing. It's financing a company's risk is what you're doing. I mean, when you buy work comp, you're not just going to buy a product, you're financing the risk of your company. So just like if you wanted to finance a house or a building or a car or a boat or whatever, you're going to pick different options of how to finance it. Do you want to put it on a 30-year payout? Do you want to put it on a 10-year payout? Do you want to put 25% down and pay less a month? Do you want to put nothing down and pay a lot more a month? You're doing the same thing with work comp. You're financing the company's risk is all you're doing. Now, it's a shared pool with everybody else in the world, but it's a big, big part of your company. I mean, we've got guys that are paying $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year just for work comp insurance. I mean, and more than that. So and to not understand why you're paying that amount of money, that's where we want to come in and kind of teach. This is what it means. This is what your EMOD worksheet means. This is how some controllable factors in it, and it's proven facts that they've actually dropped the premium just by moving a few numbers around. So
well, for perspective, in a total insurance package, you've got property, you've got general liability, you've got umbrella, you've got auto, you've got work comp. You might have inland marine if you've got mobile equipment out. Of all these components, property on a contractor, property might be 10% of your total cost. GL might be 20% of your total cost, 25% of your total cost. Auto might be 25% of your total cost. Typically in a contractor, you see a 1-to-1 ratio between what we call the P&C package, which is property, GL, auto, umbrella, and work comp. In other words, if the package is $50,000, work comp's probably going to be about $50,000 as well. It's about half of your overall expense. That's why we put so much emphasis on it, because you've got such an investment in it.
yeah. So what we're trying to do when we talk about managing your work comp and putting the light duty return to work program in place is we've got to avoid. We've got to avoid the couch potatoes. We've got to avoid the guys that when they do get hurt, they go and they sit at home and they watch TV. Because guess what? When are the ads for all the work comp attorneys normally ran? 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock every day. If you ever sit at home one day and you're sick, guess how many commercials you'll see for, are you hurt? Are you at home right now? Did you get hurt at work? Call me.
I'll fly a helicopter to your house and pick you up.
Yes, we've got to avoid those guys. And if you're married to one of those people, they're great. Trust me, we love attorneys. But we've got to avoid the ones that are hurting our work comp system, because there are definitely ones out there. And it's going to hurt your bottom line, period. You do not want to get in litigation when it comes to work comp. And a lot of the measures that are going in place are getting rid of that. But we're going to teach you how to try to avoid some of these things. And the first, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, we just had a 3-day waiting period for a long time, forever, until last year. And basically what that meant is there was a 3-day waiting period before you had to start paying work comp benefits to somebody. And we were one of like 3 states that had a 3-day. Everyone else had a 7-day, a 5-day, an 8-day. And that's not, you can't get much figured out in 3 days. If someone leaves and they've got, lower back and it's sore, or, my shoulder's a little bit sore, it's hard to get a doctor's appointment in 3 days, more or less, get them back to work in 3 days. So after the 3 days, benefits start, period. Bang, there you go. And once benefits start, your work comp, EMOD starts ticking, your premium starts ticking, and unfortunately, it does not turn out pretty. So one of the big components of 878 was to move us to a 7-day. And that happened. And this was before it happened. This is, you say pending legislation increased to 7 days. We're one of the few with less than 7 days. This was before it happened, so we kind of were hopeful that it was going to happen, and it did. So if you've ever seen, what is this movie, Dumb and Dumber?
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
And it happened, so there was a chance. That 1 in a million, it happened.
It happened.
Yeah.
It really did. The fundamentals of work comp, obviously you've got your rates are developed and filed for each state. I just had a client of mine Their work comp renewed January 1. The company, the carrier had filed for rates. Now the carriers have to file their rates with the state. Everybody understands that. The state has to approve them, and they can file, this is an interesting little caveat that's not on here, they can file a pending rate change endorsement. So if they filed for new rates for 2013 that were higher in this case than 2012, but they're not approved yet as of when the policy goes in force, this was January 1st. The pending rate change endorsement says if the state approves it in March, then we get to essentially retroactively apply the higher rates. We have reserve the right to do that. Now they don't always do that, but in this case they did. But they're filed with the state. They're effective January 1st. They all have to use the filed rates on file with the state. How it's calculated is really simple. You just take your payroll by code. You may have, flat work is different than street and road work, and outside sales is different from inside sales, and clerical is different than whatever other code you want to compare it to. So each code is a function, is a work function in business. So you take your payrolls by code times the rate for that code, and you get a manual premium. Then you factor in your EMOD discount, your mod that's on file with NCCI, who tracks that regardless of what carrier you're with, any other discounts that apply, and then you come out with your premium, which is what you pay.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have all seen what an EMOD worksheet looks like, I assume. I mean, we'll show you an example of one here in a second. The experience modifier is this disgusting equation. I mean, it's the most, we're not even going to talk about this. We'll go right here. That's what the equation is. And we all know what that is, right? I mean, that's pretty easy, right? So we don't even talk about this. Now, I mean, basically what the EMOD is, and it's this crazy worksheet, and I think it was created at like Duke University. I mean, they picked like a university that no one could ever get into, and they picked the smartest person here and said, we want you to confuse the heck out of us. We want you to confuse all the insurance agents, all the employers, all the Oklahoma Insurance Department, I mean the insurance departments in every state. We just want to make sure that you put something out there that no one understands. And that's exactly what they did.
They did a good job.
Yeah, so what they've done, and they've created what's called the EMOD. And a normal EMOD is 1.0. Sometimes you'll have prime contractors that say, what's your EMOD? Before you can bid a job, we want to know what's your EMOD. Are you a 1.0? Are you a 0.90? If you're 0.90, if you're under 1, you're doing better than the curve. If you're over 1, you're actually doing a little bit worse than your competition, we'll say, because 1 is kind of the baseline. That's the average, is what they like to say. So it's hard to get into exactly. I mean, we can get into this all day if you'd like to, and we're not going to. But the next one, the variables of your work comp EMOD is pretty easy. It's your actual losses over your expected losses. They're going to come back and say, well, in your line of business, you do concrete work. So what we expect, you've got 100 employees, you've got X amount of payroll, you've got 50 doing this and 30 doing this and 20 doing this. Based on your class code of work that you do, we expect you to have about $100,000 in losses this year in work comp losses. We're going to pay out. That includes indemnity and that includes medical cost. So, and then your actual losses. Your actual losses over your expected losses equals your EMOD. So they say, okay, we're expecting you to have 85,000. Well, guess what? You had 100. So you went over what we expected. So boom, your EMOD's 115. You're over the average now. Well, the most important number on your EMOD worksheet is the actual total losses. And that isn't just what your actual total losses are. It's not, well, I had $75,000 in losses, so that's what it is. There's that equation that they run it through. That top part of the equation is what your actual losses are. And there are some controllable factors in that, but it's your primary losses plus your excess losses plus your, we're not going to get into it. Again, I don't think we need to today, but we do understand how this is derived, and there are some ways that you can manipulate the EMOD, the actual equation, to get it down. This is what, you can explain this, Paul, because this makes zero sense to me.
Oh yeah, give me 30 seconds, so I'll take this. Essentially, it's akin to a personal credit score, especially in contracting and you're dealing with government entities, ODOT, municipalities. A lot of municipalities really get into the primes and, okay, what's your what's your experience mod, and anybody who's working for you, what's their experience mod. So you want to be wary of that. Yeah, this is, I mentioned a while ago, it's sort of like hieroglyphics. This is a sheet that we've marked up, obviously, written all over, and done some explanation on what's connected where and what this means to that. So that's just an example of some of the things we do for our clients.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got an EMOD of 1.1, what we can do is we can take your worksheet, we take your loss history, and we'll look at it and say, okay, based on your line of work and your payrolls and what you do, your minimum EMOD is 0.75. No matter if you had 0 losses over the next 10 years, it doesn't matter. Because of the size of your company, you're always going to pay work comp premium. You're always going to throw into the pot, the work comp pot, because it's work comp really, again, we're financing a company's risk. We're financing that $1 million, death claim or something like that. We're not trying to say, okay, well, we haven't had losses in 5 years, so why do we even have to pay work comp? Because you're throwing it in the pot because you're never going to win with the NCCI and with the Oklahoma work comp system. You're paying for other people's losses when they're not paying for yours. And we can tell you, hey, you know what, you're 1.1 right now, your minimum EMOD is 0.75, so you could save about 30% on your work comp premium if you just did these 3 things. And that's what your worksheet would look like after we were done working it and showing you what couple of things that you would probably need to work on. Now again, no one's going to be able to say, well, just don't have any injuries and you're not going to have it'll be fine. You can't do that. It'd be nice, but you can't do that. So, and I'll run through this real quick. The 82% of EMOD worksheets actually are wrong. On your worksheet, it's going to have how your claims were coded. Was it a death claim? Was it a temporary total dismemberment claim? Was it a partial? Was it med only? A lot of times they're wrong. I'm sorry. Question?
Temporary dismemberment?
Total temporary disability. I was thinking TTD. I'm sorry. Yeah. What did I say? Well, there is dismemberment too. Yeah.
They can. Medical science is it's advanced.
Yeah. That's one that you never want to see. Yeah. But there's like 9 different class codes, and we'll go over them in a second. A lot of the times the reserves are too high. For instance, if someone trips and falls and hurts their knee, well, the doctor will say, towards ACL, it's going to be a $100,000 claim, period. So they'll put the reserves up that quick. Well, 2 weeks later, we might find out, he just strained it, didn't actually tear it, but they left the reserves up that high. We've got to go out and get those reserves pulled back down because that goes into creating your EMOD that next year. The coding might be wrong. It might be coded 5 when it's a 6. The 6 is a med only. That's what we want to see. We want to see all the med onlys because we'll show you here in a minute that med only claims are treated very, very, very more importantly than any indemnity. You want to stay away from indemnity. So basically, there's an 82% chance your EMOD is wrong. So their 1.1 is wrong, or the 0.90 is wrong. There's an 82% chance you might be paying too much for work comp because it's wrong, and there's a 100% chance that the NCCI doesn't care. They really do not care if it's wrong or right because it's just information that was submitted to them. They put it in their little worksheet and they send it back and say, great, here you go, going forward. And this is an older stat. We don't have an up-to-date one. They'll probably punch us out one this year. 4 out of every 100 claims reported to NCCI were truly required the injured employee more than 7 days, basically. So with no possibility of return to work light duty. So 4 out of 100 claims could have been med-only claims if a company had a return to work light duty program, which will explain the major importance of having indemnity-free claims.
Injury codes. There's only these codes right here that an injury is going to be coded as when it goes onto your worksheet, when it goes into the loss. Now let's say, for instance, I'll tell you how this works. Let's say that CompSource is your work comp carrier, and you have an injured employee, and let's say he cut his hand, he went and got stitches, he's back to work within a few days. Let's say he's back to work, and since we now have a 7-day waiting period, he's back to work in 5 days, so it's med only. So they're going to code that as 6 when CompSource is going to code that as 6 on their books. Now, once a year, they're going to report any claim data for you to NCCI, who's going to put it in this big pot and promulgate your mod. So the 1 day a year that they report your claims data to NCCI, that's what Dylan's referring to, is if a reserve is up there at 100,000 for a torn ACL and it turns out it's only a sprained ACL, and you have $7,000 worth of physical therapy and then you're back to work, you've got a $93,000 variance there, and that needs to come down. If they report it on the day they report their data to NCCI for you at $100,000, NCCI says, well, we don't care if it's a reserve or if it's paid, it's all the same. And when we say NCCI doesn't care, they just take the data that they're fed and they plug it in and they go. So they're not gonna call you back and say, are you sure that knee wasn't just sprained? No, if they report 100,000, if the carrier, comp source in this example, reports it as 100,000, NCCI takes it as 100,000.
Yeah, and Will, there's a slide towards the end. It's the most important date of your work comp year, and we'll explain that more, because that is, if there's one thing you take away, again, from this, other than the DBE Advantage program, but this actual, and we said this when we did this 2 years ago, there's one thing to take away from this: take away your unit stat date, and that's what it's called, because it is the most important date of the year for your work comp insurance. And gosh, it's amazing how many times we sit down with clients that have no idea what that is. I mean, it is extremely, extremely an important date in your year. When we talked about how med only is what we want to see, we want to see the code 6. We want to see it be med only, back to work. Med only, back to work. We don't care if the guy's sitting at home getting indemnity paid, you lose this 30% or 70% discount. So ratings reflect a decrease of 70% medical only primary and excess loss dollars when ERA is applied. This is called the experience rating adjustment. This was formed in 98? Yeah, 98. This is the best thing the NCCI has ever done. What they're saying is, okay, if you have a med-only claim, that's a $1,000 claim. The guy got stitches, was back to work the next day. Well, guess what? We're not going to take that full $1,000 and put it into promulgating your EMOD going into next year. Since you got him back to work and the insurance company didn't have to pay any indemnity, and you basically limited all the exposure you could, and the insurance company just paid the medical bill for $1,000, we're going to take 70% of that off, and we're only going to take $300 and put it in your actual losses going forward. That's a huge, huge advantage. And we're talking people that have, if you have 10, 12, 15 claims a year, and you've got a bunch of med only, I mean, that can add thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to your premium, and we'll show you how that works. I mean, just one claim alone could save you $5,000 or $10,000 over a couple-year period if it was med only and not indemnity, and you paid the guy one day of a light duty program, made him watch a safety video or count screws or do something like that. So,
Anybody's head swimming?
I'm assuming we all get it so far. I mean, yeah. This is Paul's son, actually.
This is me as a baby.
Yeah. I mean, Paul's going to talk a little bit about now avoiding the indemnity and getting return to work light duty in place, and explain what that is. I mean, do you guys know what that is? Anyone have it in place right now already? I mean, is it something that is kind of, because some people love it, some people hate it. Some people say, I want to pay somebody to come and sit around my office. That's what I pay work comp insurance for, right? You can sit at home and get, $1,000 a month or $1,000 a week or whatever it is. He's not going to come and count screws or watch safety videos or read manuals all day long. Well, we show you why you want him back doing that, and talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's not for every case. There are situations where, if a guy's in a full body cast in the hospital, obviously he may not be able to come back in a light duty role. So it's not a perfect setup. However, I would bet you 8 or 9 times out of 10 you can get an employee back in a light duty role. And exactly what we're saying is keeping them out of the indemnity payments from your work comp carrier, because we use the example of paying code 5 where he's paid indemnity versus code 6 is medical only, and you get the 70% discount if it's med only. Now, if you have a claim that's $10,000 worth of or $20,000 worth of medical care and no indemnity payment, it's still a code 6 med only, and it gets a 70% discount. If $1 is paid of indemnity, it automatically shifts from a code 6, which is good, the med only, and gets the discount, to a code 5, which you don't get any discount. Even if $20,000 was medical and $1 was indemnity, or 2 days pay, which might be $200, $500, a relatively small portion of that, it shifts it automatically from a code 5 to a code 6. So that's why we put the prime importance on the light duty return to work program, which in every case that you possibly can, you need to keep them out of the indemnity payment, get them back in the office, keep them away from the couch where the attorneys in helicopters are going to offer to fly to their house and pick them up and set them up for life. You want to keep them connected with you and the business, and you want to keep them away from those kind of thoughts. Light duty return to work program is the way to do that. Now, how do you do that? Number one, it's got to be a written policy. It's got to be included in the employee handbook. In other words, communicated to everyone, and it applies to everyone exactly the same. You can't have a carve out where, okay, well, the managers are on a sort of a light duty. You know, you can do light duty from Earl's Rib Palace. No, it's got to be the same for everybody. And it can contain specific light duty job descriptions or acknowledgments of the program. And that's what we recommend to our clients who are doing this. Have a list of whatever your business is. Have basically a pre-approved, a pre-engineered list of what some of the functions that they could do if they return to light duty function. And basically,
we can provide that too. I mean,
yeah.
we've got lists that we can get, for concrete or general construction or utility workers. If you've got an office, well, there's a good chance that you've got a warehouse. If you've got a warehouse, there's a good chance there's a floor in that warehouse. If there's a floor in the warehouse, there's a good chance it needs to be swept. So we've got a lot of guys that are sweeping floors, and they sit there after 2 days, and they're wearing the pink hard helmet, and everyone's like, John, are you ready to get back on the field yet? Are you ready to get back and work with this? Well, they want to get back in the field. They don't want to sit there and be. Now, if they're at home in the air conditioning in 100-degree weather, they're fine. But if they're sitting in the warehouse and they're having to sweep, or they're counting screws, or they're watching safety videos and doing some of their light duty stuff, they don't want to do that. They're workers. They want to get back out and work. So we can provide a list. Typically, on your first assigned care, when you send someone to Concentra or you send someone to Prezi or wherever you send them for their first medical look, we give them a list and say, because you'll get the form back and it says John Smith cannot go back to work today, and his limitations are he can't lift more than 20 pounds, he can't sit more than 10 minutes, whatever. They give you all limitations. Well, we give him a letter and say, well, what can he do? And it's like, can he watch videos? Well, of course.
Right.
Can
a
he count
list
screws?
of 10 or 12 jobs. Can he do which one or ones of these 10 or 12 different functions can he do?
Yeah, and there's always going to be one on there that they can do, guaranteed. So, bang, there you go. You have the ability now to offer light duty return to work to that employee. And again, like Paul said, it's not for everyone. If someone is legitimately injured and they need to be off work for 60, 90, 120 days, that's when you start weighing it out and saying, do I really want to pay the guy? Do I have enough light duty work for this guy to come in and not do anything or do some light duty jobs and us pay him full pay? Or is this a case where work comp does need to step in and pay this guy? Let him sit at home, let him recover, let him get better. So it's not for everyone. You'd be surprised how many. It's more for some of the smaller injuries than you think. Because again, when we look at the NCCI worksheets, if we see a code 5 and it's like $100 or $500 or $1,000 of indemnity that was paid, 2 days worth, 3 days worth, it drives us crazy, because that means that you don't get the discount. 100% of that claim, indemnity and medical, goes into promulgating the EMOD going forward, when all you had to do was pay the guy for a day or two to come in, help file things for you, help answer the phone. I mean, there's a million things that you can have this guy doing. And again, his back starts feeling a little bit better after doing that for 2 days, because he wants to be back out with his buddies in the field. He didn't want to be sitting there, filing files all day long. So you can hit this one here.
Yeah. One of the rules is, if you're going to offer the employee light duty job, it's got to be at his pre-injury rate. You can't say, okay, well, you were a equipment operator at $20 an hour, and now you're going to answer the phone, and that is an $8 an hour gig. We're going to pay $8 an hour. No, you got to pay him at his pre-injury rate. So that's one thing. He's got to be offered in writing, just for documentation. And once a doctor has released an injured employee for light duty, TDD payments are prohibited if the injured worker refuses light duty after 2 weeks. You just want to have some parameters where we're making a good faith offer. If you're going to make a good faith response and try to get back and do this, there's got to be some parameters to it, and that's one of them.
Yeah, and again, this sets the barriers between the work comp courts, the attorneys, and the employers now, because if the guy comes back and says, you know what, I'm tired of coming in here and sweeping the floor. I'm tired of coming in here and filing. I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, then you're going to have to quit. You either quit or you don't show up to work and you get terminated. Well, at that point, guess what? You don't get work comp benefit anymore. So again, it helps because if you just let the guy go and say, well, we don't have any room for you anymore. There's no more room out there, doing concrete flat work because you're hurt. Well, you're going to get your butt sued on that deal, unfortunately. That's when you call HR Connect and you say, did we make the right decision? Because you did not at that point. But if you offer him light duty, you did do it right. And if he just says, you know what, I'm done with this, then it's his decision to leave. He's left. He's terminated himself. Therefore, no more payments to him, and that will save you a bunch of money. As Paul said, this is a legitimate injury. This guy's not doing any light duty work. I don't know.
He can answer the phone. Look
He
at
could answer the phone. That's true. He get that toe going.
his mouth is free. It's uncovered.
This is a
And wear a
legitimate
headset?
injury, like we said. These are the guys that work comp's built for. We're not anti-work comp people. We don't want to come in and scare the heck out of everyone and say insurance is bad. We don't want any employee, because we're pro-employer, but we're also pro-employee in the fact that if you get hurt at work, you deserve to get paid. I mean, that we understand that. We just don't like the people that are milking the system, and there's a lot of people doing that right now, a ton of people doing that, and it's killing our work comp system. This is not a legitimate injury, and this is 8 out of 10 times this is what it is. This is the guy sitting at home, back still a little bit sore. You know, he's watching the commercials. He's going to come and sue the company now when his TDD runs up.
His sock has a legitimate injury.
Yeah, yeah. That's cheese puffs or whatever he's eating. This is a root beer that he's having.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, you can keep going here.
All right, why to have it? It takes away the incentive for lingering injuries. I think you guys get that. We've kind of beaten that. A reduction in your NCCI modifier. Now, if we talk about the Code 5 versus Code 6, and Code 6 gets a 70% discount, guess what? I mean, it's pretty simple. If fewer dollars go into your loss results to NCCI, guess what that does to your EMOD? Yeah, it makes it lower. So that is the entire gist of this. Employees involved in a return to work program are less likely to hire an attorney and pursue litigation. We talk about this all the time. We say, why does TV advertising cost so much, daytime TV advertising? Because it works. Mm-hmm. If they're sitting at home watching, you know, the attorneys saying, I'm going to fly to your house in a helicopter and pick you up and set you up for life, if they hear that enough and they're disconnected from work, I think that's sort of human nature. Over time, they're going to start to believe that. They're going to start to question, well, they haven't called me in the last 10 minutes from work. Are they really concerned about how I'm doing? Those voices start, you don't want to start that. So that's
again, if they're on light duty, they're working. They're just not doing their other job, but they're working. So there's no lawsuit to file. They're at work. They're getting paid. They're just hurt. So like we said, real quick, we want to see Code 6s. This is what we want to see on all the NCCI worksheets. More Code 6s, less Code 5s. That was just a little, okay. We have one more big point here. This is an example, it's a true life example of one of our employees, of one of our clients here. Someone with a return to work and someone without a return to work. We'll go over it real fast because I know this is getting pretty boring here. It was a $1,241 claim. It's a back strain. How many times have we seen back strain injuries? It's every third injury is a back strain. The guy was off work for 8 days. Incurred $1,241,000 of medical cost. And indemnity, both a full cost, medical and indemnity. On no return to work light duty program, all $1,241 gets into your actual loss box, which we didn't get into the whole EMOD, how it's actually calculated. We did in the last seminar with, however many people were there. It was a little bit longer, and we did get into that. And we had some of the CFOs of the companies that truly wanted to dig their teeth in and see how this thing works. So, $1,241 went into the actual loss box. It stays on your mod for 3 years because your loss history on your mod is calculated over a 3-year period without the most current year. So that $3,723 goes into your actual losses for over a 3-year period. That's what it cost. No question asked. That goes into it. That's going to go into your mod. Now, if they had any type of a return to work light duty program and they were back to work within, we said 8 days. So literally, they only had to work 1 day here because now we got a 7-day waiting period. So if he was back to work, you get a 30% discount. A 70% discount. So it really 30% of that goes onto your EMOD. $372. Is all the money that gets pushed into your claim history. So $372 added to your actual loss box, stays on the mod for 3 years, $1,116 rather than $3,723. Well, you're looking at it and saying, well, that's not very much money. What's the big difference? In this exact case, this is a real life situation here, and this is a bigger client of ours. These guys are paying about, $312,000 is their manual premium. Their EMOD was 1.3, so they didn't have a great EMOD. Altogether, in this situation here, altogether, without a return to work light duty program, they paid $409,000. With one, they would have paid $405,000. You're like, well, gosh, that's $4,000. Well, over a 3-year period, because it stays on your EMOD that long, your mod worksheet, the guy paid almost $9,500 for this one little tiny $1,200 back claim. So guess what? Work comp didn't pay for it. You did. You just financed it over time. You financed this $1,200 injury for this guy. It cost you $9,000 over 3 years. that really makes sense to do. You know, when you start thinking about it, you're like, wow, you know, work comp didn't really do its job in that situation. As a banker, you know, as someone that, you know, we like to finance things, that's a pretty high rate of return, I would think. You know, if you were the comp carriers, say, heck yeah, we'll pay $1,200 a day if we can get $9,300 back over 3 years. I'd do that all day. Imagine on the bigger claims now, $15,000, $20,000, $50,000 claims. So it just gives you a quick example of one person that's actually worked for a true life, one of our actual client examples here. You know, I think it'd be a good time to saving some money right now with the stock market how it is, with everything, with the volatility of jobs right now, the stock market. Look every way you can to save money, and this is definitely one that you can. This is the most important date. Paul's going to explain this, and then we'll be done.
He mentioned earlier the unit stat date or unit statistical date. I like to abbreviate it. Most important date of the year, this is what I talked about, when your carrier is going to report your loss results to NCCI, and NCCI is going to put it in their vault, and they're done. They don't care if they're right or not. A great example of this is 1968 Masters. Robert D. Vincenzo. He is, what is he, 7 shots back? He was 7 shots back. In the final round, he shot a 7 under 65 to get in contention. I mean, he's way back in the field. He has this great round. He comes all the way back. He's feeling great. He cards a 65 to get in contention. He's going to be in a playoff with Bob Golby. His playing partner was Tommy Aaron, and if you know the rules of golf, your playing partner keeps your scorecard for you. Well, Tommy Aaron made a mistake on his scorecard, and when they get to the end of the round and he's feeling great about going to a playoff with Bob Golby, he signed his scorecard and it was incorrect. Well, that eliminated him from getting to the playoff. So the parallel here is NCCI is like your playing partner, and if they get your scorecard incorrectly from your carrier, then guess what? You're gonna pay for it, just like he did. And Bob Golby may be your primary competitor. So all this to say, it's extremely important to make sure, if you take nothing else away from today, I'd take 2 things. One is the light duty return to work program. But the primary is your unit stat date review. Make sure what your carrier is reporting to NCCI is correct before it goes to them, because they're going to use it whether it's right or not. And the way to do, how you're going to do that is you're going to call, this date is going to be the 30th day of the 6th month prior to your effective date. Mm-hmm. So you need to do some planning and look at your calendar with your insurance agent and say, okay, this is the last month. We're going to order loss runs from our carrier about 30 to 60 days prior to that. And then within that last month, we're going to go through and basically call the adjusters. If we've got 3 open claims, we're going to call them and ask them, what's going on? Can we consolidate this? Can we close the claim out? Is there anything, new developments? It's just a really roll your sleeves up, get on the horn and figure it out kind of deal. But it's got to be done annually, and it's got to be done before your loss data is reported to NCCI.
Yeah, and like we said, if the reserves are set too high on that date, when that magical date hits, your unit stat date, if you've got a $75,000 reserve set for a guy with a headache from 3 months ago that he's been at work for 2.5 months now, they're going to take that full 75 and put it in going forward. They don't care. They don't care if the next day it's brought back down. So what we do is we make sure and call the adjusters and say, and if the owner of the company is not involved, if you're not having this meeting with your agent every year, then it's not happening, because the owner has to be involved. The adjuster doesn't know if John Smith's back to work. We don't really know if John Smith's out in the field doing stuff. I mean, we'll ask you all the time, but we have no idea how long he's been back to work. So it has to be going on. It needs to be done, like Paul said, 30 to 60 days in advance. We have a prime example of a guy that, I have a mechanical contractor, big one that we write, that a guy had a heat stroke on a job. He was out, just like 105-degree weather. He had a heat stroke, took him to the hospital. He was out 3 days, legitimate heat stroke, stayed in the hospital for 2 of them, got back to work. Racked up about $11,000 worth of medical cost just because they had ran all these tests and everything else. Well, the adjuster had set a $75,000 reserve because of perhaps possible neurological issues, is what they said. So great, we understand that, that's perfect. Well, his unit stat date was approaching, in 60 days, so we did the review. We see the adjuster still had $75,000 outstanding. We said, hey, this guy's been back to work 3 days after his heat stroke. He's fine, he's completely fine. So she said, oh, well, we didn't know that. No one's told us that, and that's the job of the insurance agent and the owner of the company to say, hey, this guy's been back to work. So she dropped it from $75,000 to $2,500 because there was like one bill outstanding. That probably saved the guy. I mean, and he was paying $120,000 a year for work comp. Probably just that one claim alone probably saved the guy 15 or 20 grand worth of paying over the next 3 years, just because the reserve was set too high. And that he would have had zero control on that. He would have had no idea why his mod went up 3 points. He would have had no idea why his premium went up, 10, 15%. He just would have said, well, that's just how Oklahoma is, and it's too bad. Unfortunately, we've got a bad work comp system. So there are things that you can do. And again, it's surprising how many people have not heard of this before. And we've studied and studied and studied the NCCI worksheet, and we've gone to NCCI meetings and you talk about, you think this is boring? We go to these NCCI meetings once a year where they come to the Waterford, and we sit there, and it's like 3 hours long, and it's these actuarials from NCCI telling us all this. I mean, we're numbers guys, and it drives me nuts. But we need to learn these things so we can pass it along, and we don't expect everyone to walk away and say, we got it, we're good, we're ready to go. But this is just kind of one of the examples of what some of the larger guys are getting right now. I mean, there's a reason why when you look at, a huge contractor and say, how in the world, you've got 300 employees, you're doing $40 million a year in revenue, and your mod's like a 0.85, your losses are like fantastic. There's no way that you guys have that much loss control put in place. Well, in all reality, they're having losses, they're just managing their losses right. So it takes one loss for a small company to really feel it hard. Big companies can eat a couple of big losses. They're paying enough in insurance premium. One big work comp claim, it'll put your mod up to $150. You have to go to comp source now all of a sudden, and unfortunately you're with everybody else in the worst rate possible you can get. So this is kind of, we tie it back to the DBE Advantage. This is something we're doing for, and we have been doing for some of the larger guys, and we're not the only ones that are doing this for the bigger guys. I mean, I'm sure all the agencies are treating their $1 million customers differently than their $10,000 customers, just because they're having to deal with them on a daily basis, and they're seeing the fluctuation in the work comp rates, whereas the smaller guys, unfortunately, might be with a smaller agent, might be with kind of a rural agent, maybe someone that doesn't understand all this or get all this or understand the importance of saving money and putting it back into working capital for a surety program. So the DBE program now is tying all this back together, where we want to pass this information down to everybody. We want the DBEs to learn these things too, and we'll get in detail as the program goes forward, because there are going to be some specific DBE type of programs that we will put together that's just going to focus purely on your industry, purely on the work comp legislation, how it's going to affect you. We don't care how it affects the hospital down the street, because they're a completely different business. We're contractor people. You guys are a lot more dangerous business than the CPA firm down the street, unfortunately. So you have to watch your comp a lot better. So we just say make the right choice when you're and this is a legitimate off of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire or whatever this game show used to be called. This is real. We didn't make this up here. I don't know where we found it, but yeah, this lady's made the wrong choice. Yeah. Yeah, if you can see that, she has chosen the elephant as large. Yeah, I mean, that's either one heck of a big elephant or, yeah.
When I look at the moon, it's only about this big, and an elephant,
yeah.
I don't know, it's just me.
Fake moon.
Yeah, so the takeaway points for this was, kind of what we've already said. NCCI can be cracked. There are some things that you can do that your competition's not doing that will help you guys become more successful in your bidding procedures, because you're going to save money. So work comp's a job cost, just like your GL, just like your, it's all job cost. You build it into your bid. So if you're paying less than the guy down the street, well, guess what? Your bid's going to be a little bit less in that at least one piece of it. So
Any questions from anybody? Go ahead.
If you said the guys people get attorneys, how much does it cost for a company average to defend themselves against the workers' comp?
The question is, how much would it cost for a company to defend themselves? Attorney's fees. That's been one of the problems with the system, is the attorney's fees have been basically set up where if you win, he wins. He's just going to take a percentage of the winnings. Now, if you're going to hire a defense attorney and defend yourself, I don't know what they run, $150, $250 an hour.
Yeah, and unfortunately these things, when it does go to litigation, they get stretched out. So you're not just paying a guy for one sit-down deposition and it's done. You're going to be paying this for the next 3, 4, 6 months, and that's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid the employer going out and trying to get an attorney, because a lot of times the carriers will fight it for you. if your agent, if your owner, if everyone's on top of it, you should never have to hire an attorney.
Right.
You know, because if you've done all the proper procedures and have them in place, then you're almost sue-proof in that situation because you've got a return to work light duty program. You've got all the documentation correct. If they sue you, then it's the carrier, and the court system is changing now too, which we didn't get into that. We're going to a more conservative type court system, and we're going to an arbitration now, a third party like mediation rather than the judicial system, which we were one of 2 states doing that. That's going to be extremely, extremely successful in the state going forward. But if you do all the right things, it's going to be pretty hard to get sued. Yeah, but yeah, they're expensive, and you pay for that out of pocket. So you don't want that to happen.
In a case like that, you and your carrier are on the same side of the table. You're on the same team. They're basically in front of you with the bag of money. So it's sort of yours, mostly theirs. So yeah, they'll provide defense, and they take care of that, and that goes into the claim cost.
And these, again, with the last group that we did this with, these were some things we didn't go over. A lot of these guys, and again, these were kind of high-touch profile clients that we deal with on a lot. So, what's better, frequency versus severity on work comp? How to go over an audit when you guys get on an annual audit? What's right? What's wrong? Different programs, captives, loss-sensitive programs, deductibles, going over class codes. Make sure that your payrolls are classified correctly. We have a concrete contractor that had a bunch of all of their payroll put in road and street. Well, that was a 5221 or whatever the code is on that. Well, a lot of their work was parking lot, it was sidewalk, and a lot of work was off street, which is half. I mean, we're talking like a $14 rate or a $7 rate. Well, they were just putting all on street and road, and we ended up getting them like $68,000 back in cash because we reclassified the code correctly. And when the audit came in, we said, look, this parking lot, this shouldn't be in street and road. This is actually concrete flat work. And it was about $1.5 million worth of payroll that had been classified wrong for years. And this is just the first year we took over the client, we showed them this. I don't even want to imagine how much money they overpaid over the last, and we weren't trying to bury anyone on it, but I mean, years and years and years. And then the first year we got them back $68,000. So
and that's not an example of us, having some brilliance that somebody else. All we did was ask the question,
yeah,
what do these guys actually do? And they told us, and we said, I don't think it should all be thrown in here. And so a lot of times it just starts with a question.
Yeah, and then finally the NCCI did make some changes starting in 2013, where they changed the primary loss cap, which again we didn't go over that today, but that was a big change that NCCI made, that a return to work light duty program helps in that, and we did a whole seminar just on that. It was a big deal.
Yeah. Any other questions?
How do you determine the cost of the program for the DBEs to be involved with DBE Advantage? I mean, what's their cost?
There is no cost.
Yeah.
What if they pay their premium? Essentially, you've got a carrier, you've got which is, let's say in Chicago, and you've got a contractor here in Oklahoma, and we're the broker, we're the go-between that puts the two together, and they pay their premium, they get all the things we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, there's no added fee. Now, again, there could be if you want an extra loss control. If you decide you really like what John Schlarb's doing, he's really taking control of your job sites and your project managers, and after you might get 20 or 30 hours of upfront loss control for free in the program, depending upon the size of your case. If you really think, we could use this guy 2 times a month all year, for the rest of the year, 3 times a month, and it's an extra 50 hours, then that's something that you work out with him, and he would charge you a discounted rate of what he would charge somebody else because you're in the program. But and a lot of people have done that. They really enjoy his services. He does a good job, and he saved a lot of money for our clients over time, from OSHA and from loss control visits from carriers and going forward. But yeah, like Paul said, I mean, it's not a separate program you have to buy into. It's basically just you buy into the idea of working with brokers that have put something together like this. And this isn't the sales pitch by any means, but it is. It's working with brokers that have put together, their time and money and efforts in creating a program that is basically giving the same services that some of the larger guys are getting down to the DBEs. And we did a seminar on, we did a webinar actually on Surety 2000. When we had to all go over and start doing online bidding. That was a tremendous hit, and we had ODOT sponsor it, and we did it for them, and that was one that I'm sure a lot of the DBEs would have probably liked to have gotten involved with, because I don't know how many of you guys are actually doing what is it, Surety 2000, Bid Express, doing all that, but all the ODOT, all the big guys are, they have to nowadays. So And a lot of them had no idea how to do it. So we put on a webinar just for them. After it was over, we had a Surety 2000 person on the phone. We had ODOT on the phone. They answered all the questions. The next day, everyone was ready to go. Then Surety 2000 and Surety 2000 set everybody up over the phone. They would get their numbers and call them back. It was extremely easy process, and the DBEs, unfortunately, probably weren't aware of that was going on because it was only set up for some of the larger guys. So now we want to push these services down, but we need to have participation. That's the thing. I mean, unfortunately, if there's only one DBE in the program, yeah, we'll give you all the services, but this is built for capacity. We want to bring you guys all together, and we want a contractor that's doing general construction and a contractor doing concrete and a contractor doing utilities all in the same room, asking the questions and going over and saying, here's what we're struggling with, and how do we get more work from this guy, and how we do this and that. We can help do all those things, but we need the support of more DBEs is what we do, and that's why we just have rolled this out. You're going to hear and see a lot more about it going forward, and the ones that we are already writing currently are extremely happy with it. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Not a question, but I did have a comment. I have to say something. One of the things that I think is an advantage to managing workers' comp issues and the puzzle pieces is that it will also improve your competitiveness, because primes look at your EMOD rate when they're trying to decide who to sub to. So in addition to saving money, there's another competitive advantage.
Sure.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you've probably been asked a dozen times, what's your experience rating? What's your EMOD? I don't know why they want to know that. Well, they want to know, how have you handled your safety internally? I mean, how do you handle your job site injuries? And because guess what? If your guy gets hurt on your job site, he's probably going to get hurt on our job site too, and it'll somehow find its way back to us. So yeah, they absolutely will want to know that.
Really, the 10,000-foot view of this whole program and the reasons behind it is, I'd like to take a snapshot of the pool of contractors that we get in the program and that we work with and that subscribe to all the things we're talking about, and track that over 10 years. And then take a cross-section of contractors that are outside the program, that aren't watching, that aren't doing a unit stat date review, that aren't doing light duty return to work, that aren't doing all these things we're talking about, and see who's more successful in 10 years. And I know I believe that everything there is. If you're subscribing to these things and you take them to heart and you apply them in your business day to day, you'll be more successful than your competitor who doesn't in 10 years.
Yep. They'll definitely pay less money than they are. Anything else?
Good point. Yes.
You said that you have an HR line, like a technical assistance line. Is that line going to have information, like, for instance, ADA laws and that sort of thing, if you have someone that has a permanent disability?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
May want a reasonable accommodation or something like that?
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, these are licensed HR technicians. I mean, that's exactly what they are. They have to go through, and it's not an Insurica thing. This is a complete third-party service that we pay for. And yeah, their advice that they give you is holds up in the court of law. They'll record it, they'll email it to you in a JPEG and say, here you go. You can use this in your defense. So absolutely.
Anybody else? Well, thank you
Yeah,
guys for
appreciate it.
having us.
Yeah.